Yep.
Yep. Excellent. So I'll kick off. Thanks to everyone who's joined. So I'm Luke Johnstone, Vice Chair of the Early Careers Group of the Engineering Group of the Geological Society. That's a bit of a mouthful, so I'll just say EGS-EC. Thanks to all who've dialed in. Today's event will be the Glossop Award. What is it and how do I enter? And we're advertising this as the application for deadlines closes in about a month. So we thought it'd be appropriate to hold an event, just giving a little bit more insight to the background of the award, the process, and then some insights from previous winners. So today we'll be running through, nice animation from Josh, Glossop Award, what is it, who can enter, eligibility criteria, the application process and prize, then the 2024 award topics, key dates, and some brief sort of notes from our previous winners, myself, Jonny, Neville, and Anna Morley. So to kick off, the award is named after the geologist Rudolph Glossop. It was an instrumental part in the development of the geotechnical field in the UK. To sort of give the blurb there, he was credited with bringing together the academics and practitioners in the engineering geology in the UK. He was involved in setting up the engineering group in 1964 and in 1966 the Quarterly Journal of Engineering Geology, having previously also helped set up the Geotechnical Society and the journal Technique in 1948. He was the 8th ranking lecturer in 1967, and he was also the chairman of the engineering group from 1965 to 68. He was the vice president of the Geological Society in 1969, and his contribution to the engineering geology as a whole is recognized by the engineering group of the Geological Society, EGS, by the prestigious Glossop Lecture and Glossop Award, both established in 1997. The actual event is held at the Royal Institute, famous for the Christmas lectures, and starts off with the networking section, followed by the Glossop Award. This is the early careers component, which is typically 20 minutes. The Glossop Medal, which is the late careers component, which is typically an hour, and then a post Glossop reception. The taglines are sort of, it's a prestigious award made annually to an outstanding early careers ground engineer, but the quote on the website actually it says engineering geologist or geoenvironmentalist, but it's been won by geographers, geomorphologists, and topics have covered a wide range from sort of hydrogeology, quarry blasting, technology, and risk and opportunity. So it's very much open to all. The eligibility, you need to be a fellow of the Geological Society, have less than 8 years of postgraduate experience, and be working towards or have already obtained Chartered Geologist/Scientist status. And what is the application process? So it's a two-stage affair. Firstly, you submit a written application. This is a clip of the written application here that can be downloaded from the EGS website. And your application is comprised of a 2-page topical abstract alongside a 250-word career summary and a 250-word sort of EGS role summary. There's much more information around this on the website, alongside an up-to-date CV. Following your written submission, the leading applicants are shortlisted, and then they do a short presentation to a judging panel from which the winner is selected. The prize itself for the award is presenting their winning presentation at the Royal Institute at the Glossop event, being awarded an engraved geological hammer. You can see my one on the right-hand side. It's one of my most prized possessions. £500 for a Geological Society special publication of their choice, or attendance to a training course or sort of field meeting supported or run by the engineering group. A seat on the EGS committee if desired. Obviously, this isn't mandatory, and you can turn this down. And of course, a sort of raised profile amongst your peers and company in the wider geotechnical community. For 2024, just touching briefly on the award topic and key dates. So there's 2 topics that you can select from this year. The first is give a research or project example that shows advancements in sustainability and a strive towards net zero. Explain your engineering, geological, or related discipline contribution. The second, give a research or project example that demonstrates improved efficiency in ground engineering through digital or similar. The key dates are up there now. Now, the key one is the 21st of November, the date of the event. If you're not going to be available on the 21st, then consider applying and getting shortlisted, etc. But the winner does need to present on that date. The applications deadline is coming up. That's the 28th of June. The shortlist notification is the 26th of July, with notification to the finalists through September. Now, we'll hear briefly from the former winners, just the application, their experience, and potentially a few tips and tricks to help you along the way. We'll start off with myself, Luke Johnstone, then go to Jonny, Neville, and Anna Morley from Arup. So the 2023 was the works of the late Peter Fuchs. My abstract and presentation was titled Quantifying a Conceptual Model, a case study on total geological history. I was quite lucky because I'd already written a previous publication, this one you see down on the right-hand side, differentiating fill and natural soft clays, the value of a desktop study in building a geological model, which lined up with the total geological history philosophy of Peter Fuchs. So I wrote an abstract that sort of wove these two together. It's equally applicable to pick up some project work that you've been doing, or you can do a thought piece of non-related to your project work. It's entirely how you want to sort of weave your presentation together. Touching very briefly on the paper, this is around a sort of residential development in Sydney, focused on some pea soup, some reclaimed land, which was very problematic and poorly defined. The guts of the paper focused on the understanding the conceptual site history. How do we understand how the site's been built up, alongside some back of the envelope calculations, and then feeding this into a sort of refined geological model with higher confidence. Throughout all of this, I weaved in the sort of total geological history and related it to the legacy of Peter Fuchs. And in both the abstract and presentation, started off with the sort of wider problems in our industry, the unknown and uncertainty in our sort of ground investigations and ground models, weaved in total geological history with that main sort of quote there, summarizing it. The conditions and geotechnical characteristics of the site are a product of the geological and geomorphological history of the site, including past and present climatic conditions. Short is total geological history. Then narrowing down to a summary at the end. With this understanding of the site history, we can then make a much better guess at what sits between our boreholes, moving from unknown unknowns to known unknowns or knowns, hopefully. A brief view into my submission itself. The topical abstract was 850 words with a single figure, and the personal statements, 250 words each, or about 500 words. And briefly touching on my experience, sort of how was it and why would I encourage other people to apply? I think the main thing to reflect on is there was a huge just upwelling of support from my colleagues across the business, both before and after the event, giving advice, feedback, or just wanting to talk about my presentation and talk about the topic. So they were genuinely interested in it. Over 30 people from Atkins attended. There's a group photo on the right-hand side. I'd like to think they were there for me, but I think everyone probably would have been there anyway. The second reason and second sort of thing I've noticed would be just a huge amount of exposure to the wider geotechnical industry. Through the panel assessment, the presentation, joining the eggs committee, I've had a huge amount of exposure both to eggs and the wider industry. One of the highlights of my year has been helping organize the eggs annual conference and all the sort of interesting people and everything that I met along the way. It was one of the highlights of my year. Thirdly, it's invaluable experience presenting to a crowd. I presented at conferences before, but never to a crowd of this size with sort of lights in my eyes and at such a interesting event. I can definitely say I'm much more confident presenting after this. And in addition, it directly lines up with your chartership criterion, oral and visual presentation. Last and not least, it's a very prestigious award, which comes in the form of an awesome rock hammer. This is, as I said earlier, it's hanging on my wall in my bedroom and one of my most prized possessions. Reflecting on my experience, I'd encourage absolutely everyone to apply and reinforce that even being shortlisted is a great achievement. With that, I'll pass on to. Oh no, sorry, just a couple of recommendations. I forgot about this slide. So these are the things that I think really helped me along the way. Read the question, stay laser focused on the exam question. What are you trying to answer? What's the topic on, and try and build a presentation around that. Tell a story, start off sort of as I showed earlier with a comment on the wider or problem within the wider geotechnical industry, and then circle back to this. Have similar themes throughout your presentation, either visually or in a narrative. I think this is something that really helped me. Pick a topic that you're passionate and knowledgeable about. You're doing an abstract that's being judged, and then a presentation to an expert panel about some of the industry leaders. They know their stuff, and you really need to know your stuff to go through the process. If you know what you're talking about and it's something that you really enjoy, I think that'll speak for itself. Another thing is, this is a no-brainer, but give your presentation a number of times and get feedback, and watch the previous lectures. This isn't a copy their homework situation. It's have a look at the previous presentations, not just the Glossop Award, but the Glossop lecture especially. What's worked really well for them? What do you think resonates with you? What style of presenting? What way of organizing your slides or speaking? What resonates with you? What can you pick up? And what do you think will help you with your presentation? That I'll pass over to Jonny.
Thank you, Luke. Okay, I will try and not cover treaded ground by Luke, so I'll whiz through this. I think generally the application is very similar to when I did it, to what it is now. And so for myself, the key difference was the topic that I was going for, and it was it was kind of more of a thought piece. This was what role will technology play in the future of engineering geology? So it's slightly different, but as Luke said, it's not completely different. You can still do thought in this year's one. And so the way I decided to approach it was answer that question using case studies and of my experience to kind of, that's how my view has kind of been formed, right? You know what you know, and so my view is kind of founded on what I've been involved with and stuff like that. So that's the kind of approach I took, and I quite enjoyed it because it's one of those ones that um especially technology, and it links to what the topic, one of the topics this year, which is kind of efficiencies, is very kind of strongly linked. It's one of those topics that you probably have a view, but then once you start to think about that and maybe apply for something, you kind of you delve into stuff and you actually learn quite a lot yourself. So one of my reflections was that I quite enjoyed just digging into the topic a bit more and understanding it, and I grew just from that, because I probably had a view of it, but I really probably didn't properly understand it. So for that alone, I quite enjoyed just kind of delving into the topic and seeing, like unpicking that as a topic and where it would go, because it's kind of an opportunity to step back, and I've kind of from the project pressures and of delivery and see where things are going. So yeah, that was my topic. I won't go into much about my actual presentation, but it was basically revolved around that diagram there, putting data kind of at the center, and this is kind of a bit, it's funny how 5 years can be a long time now. I think this isn't kind of, I wouldn't say my presentation was necessarily that groundbreaking. It probably wasn't that groundbreaking at the time either. It was kind of just kind of bringing a lot of stuff together and maybe using case studies as well. But this is very much now kind of, I think, bread and butter now, and how we can make sure that the data gets put at the heart of these projects. And I think everyone will have experiences of where maybe we could have been more efficient in that data transfer progress, kind of through that engineering life cycle that is there, that we're all so familiar with, and where we could improve on that. So that's where my kind of presentation talked about, and I think it's very similar to potentially that efficiency. And I mean, you can go whatever direction you want, but if you want to kind of start by looking at that kind of process diagram of the engineering geology life cycle and start to pick of maybe your opinion of where you've had experience of where there has been inefficiency in each of those, that would be quite a good topic, because you're still keeping it geology and engineering geology focused, and then kind of honing down to it. But anyway, you can go wherever you want, but that would be maybe one idea. I know obviously there's the sustainability, climate change aspect as well, that you can go down on that route too. So yeah, just remember, it's not just the question. Ours was when we did it was 250 words on that topic. Also had to do a bit on my career to date and then what I'd like to achieve on the Eggs committee. So that I think it's fairly similar, and then also an up-to-date CV and then presentation if submitted. Yeah, but let's go to the next slide, Luke. I've just got one more. Cool. Yeah. So in terms of opportunities and benefits, a lot of them are similar to Luke. Certainly, I put the number one there, confidence. I think it's quite an interesting one. I think very much early in your career, as you're building, you're learning a lot of experience, and you can often be quite used to producing something and then getting someone to check it, someone to approve it, and it, sometimes this was kind of one of the first times for me where this kind of was the opportunity just to give my opinion, and that giving that and kind of gave me some confidence, and it was kind of people would listen. It was quite an interesting experience. I think yeah, up until that point, you're probably used to just kind of giving someone, and you'll get loads of comments back and red pen all over your reports and stuff, or you might have a lot of feedback. Whereas this was quite a good, oh, okay, like people are listening, people are interested. So it's a really, really good confidence booster for me. As Luke said, it obviously helps very well with the chartership competencies as well, and generally just getting ready to present is a good skill to have in the industry, particularly as you kind of develop in your career. You'll be more and more client side exposure, and also just generally presenting to people. So that is a really good thing. Industry exposures as well. As Luke said, it's amazing how many people you can meet in the Eggs committee, and it's interesting how small the community is. So once you get those opportunities, it's amazing how often you kind of cross paths people again, and how doors open, and yeah, you just get to know people. And obviously we're all going to be in this industry for probably, I mean, I'll be in it for the next probably 20, 30 years at least. So, and I'll probably by the time I'll retire, 40 years. So it's nice to get to know the people in the industry, and kind of build those connections and networks. And then the fourth one, just to add, it is in kind of internal job opportunities. Obviously, it can be external as well, but personally for me, it's kind of opened the door, and probably put my career on a path that I wouldn't have necessarily expected. So the topic was obviously on technology for me, and really randomly from that, I kind of obviously I did a lot of research, started to think, oh, I quite enjoy this topic, and I think there's kind of a lot to be done in this area, and I can add some value to it. So following that, I mean, just coincidentally, some people internally caught the presentation on the recording on the site, not in my kind of area, but in a different kind of part of the business, and they said, oh, well, would you like to kind of get involved in kind of more information management stuff? We're looking to set up this kind of system. And I thought, yeah, that's really interesting, and it's kind of it stemmed from there. And it's interesting how I often reflect on how, if I hadn't gone for the awards and I hadn't thought about it, and I hadn't then got that exposure, they wouldn't have looked at that presentation. And you start to think of that kind of crossroads moment, don't you, in the sliding doors moment. So definitely it's interesting how these things happen. And so I think that's just to encourage you that you won't often maybe see what could happen, but I think that's encouragement. Just kind of go with the flow, and that's really kind of helped my career, and I now kind of I'm in something, and people value it, and I enjoy it. So yeah, just encourage you, and kind of just don't worry about it too much. Just go with the flow and see where it takes you. And then if you click on one more, I think I've got an animation for I think it's tips and tricks, is it? Yeah, tips and tricks. So think definitely stick to the theme focus. There's two themes this year. Don't try and dilute your presentation by maybe trying to cover both of them or going off on tangents. There's plenty on there that you can discuss, and I'm sure, don't worry necessarily that you don't have enough to cover in it. I'm sure you will, and also don't worry if maybe the case studies or projects you've been working on maybe don't quite have enough. You can start to expand that into the thought pieces, as we've been talking about. Do make it interesting, and show your passion. Luke kind of touched on this as well. I think you've got to remember at the end of the day, we're people, particularly when you get into the presentation stage, people want to kind of want to listen to an interesting presentation, and so maybe links to that third point there. Maybe think outside the box a bit, and make it a bit more interesting in terms of maybe challenge kind of conventions and stuff, like initial thoughts. It's no one's going to kind of sometimes you're not necessarily be wrong as long as you can kind of provide backup of evidence to back up your opinion. So don't be scared to kind of put your neck out and say maybe something, as long as you've got kind of good logic behind that. I think certainly quantifying the benefits and wider impact of the industry. I've put that because looking at the two topics you've got this year, I think both of them are quite important. So I think particularly the efficiencies, do make sure kind of if you're doing case studies where you worked on, show how the efficiency benefits have been quantified maybe in that particular example, and then kind of holistically look at how the wider industry could benefit from that that efficiency more broadly. And then same with sustainability and climate change as well, like how maybe in a particular one case study it's worked, and how maybe reflect on how that could be a benefit to the wider industry. I've just put a final one. This is very specific to me and very ironic, but particularly considering I was doing technology and how it could benefit engineering geology. I managed to get on a plane the day before my shortlisted presentation, and left my laptop on the plane. And I didn't back it up, so it was on the laptop, and I had to just rewrite my whole presentation overnight. I did get the laptop back, thankfully, but I didn't get it back in time to do the presentation. So I had a very panicked one night. So do like that. That's much more like it's now with OneDrive and stuff. That wasn't really like a thing back in the day, and but now that's harder to do, to not back it up. It kind of does it automatically. But anyway, that would be my final personal tip. But yes, I'll pass over to Anna now, isn't it?
That's great, Jonny. Thank you. And to Luke, you guys have done a great job of sharing your tips and tricks. For me, it was a long time ago, 2007, and I've only got one slide, which I'll click on in a minute to show you how the development was going. And at the time I did the application, it was a similar process. I had to put in a CV and an abstract, but I think there wasn't a specific topic. I don't recall it being a specific topic or a question. It was just about involvement in a project. And I would say you've got nothing to lose by putting in an abstract, because and the CV, which is very few words, and you know, give it some thought, but just don't sort of agonize over it. Do get it in. So the project I presented back in 2007, a long time ago, I'd been working on for a couple of years already, and I think it was sort of, at the time, reduce, reuse, recycle was like cutting edge. So I was talking about sort of, it was largely an earthworks project, and I think the reason it resonated with the panel was I sort of had benefited from a sort of long and detailed involvement with multiple aspects of the project. So I was able to talk about time on site as an RE, looking at earthworks, looking, you know, large scale ground investigation. We covered off early LiDAR use, slope engineering and slope stability analysis, rockfall modelling, and then all wrapped up in a sort of sustainability focus. So if you click onto the next slide, that's what the site looked like back in 2007, and the site's essentially that was what was the vision for it. So yeah, you can keep it at the vision. So the vision is 4 planned villages, and the site's adjacent to Ebbsfleet International Train Station. And unbelievably, I'm still working on the project now. So it's been a long-term investment for me. But I've learned a lot, and I have done all sorts of different things on the project. It's actually ended up as 3 villages. And if you go and check it out, it's the former quarry next to Blue Water Shopping Centre. So if you go and have a look on Google Earth, you can see how it's evolved over the last 15 or so years. So as I sort of alluded to, I think it resonated because I was able to demonstrate a sort of a wide variety of involvement in the project, and particularly my involvement rather than the team involvement, which I think is important to draw out what's your personal experience with the project or the presentation or the question. These days we do have a specific question, as Luke and Johnny said. I think it's really important to tailor your project or tailor your presentation, obviously, to the question. And then what did I gain from it? As Luke and Johnny have already said, internal profile raising is excellent. Externally as well, and great to meet some more people. I think Ground Engineering did a magazine article and an interview on me after I'd won that award. So that was great. Presentation experience, as the guys have said, it was I actually did mine in the Royal Geographical Society. Absolutely enormous auditorium. So that's really good experience, and the experience of colleague support and interaction, and you learn a lot because you're sort of you're refining your presentation, you're getting feedback from your colleagues, and you also get feedback from the panel. So once you've done your presentation, they give you feedback, and often they're extremely experienced experts in their field. And they give you really useful feedback and perhaps aspects of a project or a thought or a topic that you haven't considered before. I think that's kind of it from me. I think sort of echoing Luke's point about enthusiasm as well. I think, again, when you give the presentation as a competition, it's about you're in a room with a number. I think the panel's normally 4 or 5 people, and I think for me, what really helped was I was super enthusiastic about this project. I knew a lot about it, and it was really easy to connect with the panel because we were in a relatively close environment. So I was really happy to answer their questions, and I think sort of enthusiasm shines through. I think that's it from me, Luke. I am happy to obviously answer any questions, but I think I'll leave it there.
So that was fantastic. Thanks both Anna and Johnny. There haven't been any questions that have come through in the chat or Q&A, but if anyone has any questions, would love for you to pop them in now and we can answer them. Noting, Johnny, you have to head off shortly and you're hosting the recording, so there is a little bit of time pressure.
Presumably, Luke, they can send questions in, can they, to the early career group if they've got
Absolutely.
any, and there's no such thing as a stupid question, because we want to really encourage people to enter. It's a fantastic experience, and as Luke said, if you get shortlisted, that's still a fantastic success. Many of my colleagues have gone through that experience.
Excellent. We haven't had anything come through, so I'll take that as permission to stop. Or Johnny, can you stop the recording? And sort of thank everyone for dialing in. This will go up on YouTube, and we'll likely do a LinkedIn post about it. Thanks again to the presenters who have presented today, and everyone for dialing in.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate that. Well done for organising it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Johnny, that's
Bye,
all
everybody.
saved. Thanks, Anna.
Bye then.
Yeah, look, I'm just going to check. It does.
I just haven't had the
save. Yeah,
recording stopped thing come through.
I've only got a start. But it is recording because it's live. I don't know if it's a live event. It's different. Let's see. You're now only recording this meeting. Yeah. Okay. So I've stopped the transcription. I think once we go off,
outstanding.
It will just stop.
Case.
We'll be able to check. I'll check once it's gone off.
Excellent. Yeah. Excellent. In that case, thanks for your presentation. It was great to meet digitally, and I'm sure we'll run into each other.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, cheers.
Good luck
Okay.
getting to the airport. Cheers, mate.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.